Alrighty, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Faith and Program Committee meeting of Tuesday, January 6th. January 16th. First off, Happy New Year to everyone. To start off, I'd like to call to order our meeting. And for attendance purposes, we have Trustee Bria Corbett, who has sent in her regards, and so has Trustee Bruno Ianica. All other trustees are present this evening tonight. To start off with our opening prayer, could I have a trustee please the opening prayer for us? Trustee Daryl D'Souza. Just getting some.
We'll start with the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Spirit of God, here in this moment of winter's darkness, we pause to reflect on your light. With grateful hearts, we give thanks for your creation. Beneath the snow, you bless us with the seeds of promise that will break open again in spring. Open our hearts to a spirit of gratitude, that we may bring your light to others, and the hope that springs from your never-ending love. May our gratitude be sown to illuminate your goodness. Amen.
And the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you very much, Trustee Stefano Piscucci. Next up, we move on to item A3, which is our land acknowledgement. On days like today, when the sky is gray, the trees are dark and bare, and the weather is downright ugly, it's hard to think of the land as all-giving and all-knowing. And yet, especially at times like these, hope is at its fullest and its most promising, calling us to action against past and present wrongs. Despite all we see and hear and feel around us, as always, we thank the Mississaugas of the credit, our local treaty partners who have been stewards of this land for generations. Together, we commit to beauty and peace and to fight injustice and vigorously, passionately, and resolutely create a future with hope. Next, we are moving on to item A4, which is our approval of the agenda. Could I please get a mover for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Trustee Daryl D'Souza. Next, we move on to our declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? Seeing no declarations of interest, we move on to our next item, which is A6, our approval of the minutes of the Faith and Program Committee meeting from October 10th, 2023. Can I please get a mover?
I move, Thomas.
Moved by Trustee Thomas. This is including the business arising from the minutes, which have been attached as well. So it's been moved by Trustee Thomas. All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We move on to our next item, which is our proposed terms of reference for the year of 2024. Associate Director Amaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As is the case every year at the inaugural meeting of the Faith and Program Committee, where there is a new chair and vice chair, trustees are provided with the proposed terms of reference, which you can find on page 12 of your agenda. Those proposed terms of reference identify the scope of the function of the Faith and Program Committee meeting, and there is a recommendation there for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Director Amaro. Could I get a mover for the terms of reference? Moved by Trustee Luz Del Rosario. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. We move on to our next item, which is item C of our delegations this evening. I'd like to welcome forward our first delegate for this evening, Mr. Tony Whelan, who will be presenting the Christian perspective on sports. Thank you very much for coming today, Mr. Whelan. I'm just going to go over a few speaking notes in reference to delegations. First off, welcome and thank you for your delegation here today at the Faith and Program Committee meeting. I would like to review a few points related to the rules and process related to the delegations. You will have 5 minutes to make your presentation. This will be timed. We will signal you when there's 1 minute remaining, as you will be able to see on the timer on my right side. If you intend to use or begin to use the name, title, position of a staff member or any personal or other information with respect to another group, including a member of the board or committee or a pupil or their parent or guardian, I will rule that you must address the committee of the whole in an in-camera session. Delegates can be critical of the board decisions or make submissions with respect to recommendations or decisions. However, I will rule that your delegation is out of order and end the delegation if either of the following occurs. Number one, the information in your oral speech is significantly different than the written speech provided. Or number two, your speech, notes, and/or other materials contain, or if you begin to use language that constitutes A, an invasion of privacy, breach of confidentiality, defamation of character, or is seen as obscene, or there is discrimination against an individual or groups of individual based on a protected ground under the Ontario Human Rights Code. That being said, once you have completed your presentations, trustees will be given an opportunity to ask your questions of clarification in regards to your presentation. And once questions of clarification from trustees are complete, your role in the delegation will be concluded and you will be asked to leave the podium and take your seat in the gallery. At that point, trustees may choose to debate this issue and may ask questions to staff. It is important to be aware that a decision may not be made on this issue at this meeting. And if there are no questions, feel free to proceed with your delegation.
This evening, I have two main points. First is that football and rugby are very dangerous. Allow me to share how this
Unknown caller.
Allow me to share how this issue became real for me. Saw an ambulance taking a student off the rugby field. Told she had no feeling on one side of her body. Saw a student in a coma at St. Mike's who had been trained rugby. Covered at a school where they were at a funeral of a student who had collapsed on the football field. There are many others, but these are anecdotal, yes, but it's enough to make me question these sports. I remember when the question rose up. I heard in the news about rugby deaths. Annie Castillo, Rowan Stringer, Bodie McCarthy. And I started to read, especially about chronic traumatic encephalopathy in football. I believe there's a handout that's been provided to you. It has 5 articles about CTE and a quote from the Vatican. CTE is a brain disease that often leads to suicide. The second article on there is from the University of Rochester, where they did MRI scans on teens' brains before and after one season. Only 2 had concussions, yet 2/3 of the students' brains were affected after one season of play. It wasn't CTE, but they talked about an effect on the brain. The American Journal of Bioethics, in the article that you asked for when I was here last, it says that school football is particularly problematic. Students are encouraged to play and there's peer pressure and so on. And notice that almost all the deaths in rugby and football are in schools, not leagues. The issue has been all over the media, especially football, of course. After the PBS documentary Out of Their League, there was a headline in the Toronto Star, "Football Kills," and nobody really cares. It's hard to take. Globe had a similar headline. Okay, we get it. Football kills. Now, what time is the game on? And what message does it send when we do violent, dangerous sports? Does not teach wellness, reverence for life. You know, I come back here so often, you may think that ending these sports is all I care about, but it's not. It's the environment, it's war, it's our love of violence in society. It's peace with each other in schools, bullying, and so on. The answer to all of them is the same. Learn respect and learn to reverence life, and especially human life. Teaching this is how Catholic education can have an impact on society. Many think we have nothing to offer, but we do. I was talking to a past student about the environment. She's an environmentalist. You know, she says we lessen our carbon footprint, but there's nothing else we can do. We're not the government. Many young people have given up on working with the government, but I believe it is essential. And that brings me to my second point. What can we do? Last January, when I came, The response at the end was to write the Ministry of Education. And I believe they just passed it on to the Ministry of Health. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe perhaps we could act at this level. You are elected and entrusted with the mission of nurturing the well-being of our students, mind, body, and soul. So every other time I've tried to come here, I've tried to say that you should have a committee, an inquiry, a sermon, dialogue. So now I'll try something else. I think there should be a policy at this board. Maybe we could be outstanding. We can start something like Toronto did with the strap in 1971. They were willing to be the only one. Country caught up some 30-odd years later. I would suggest a policy that states this: sports should be for health. We will not organize and encourage collision sports. Rugby and football are known as collision sports, cause death, destruction of the body and mind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whelan, for your delegation this evening to the Board of Trustees. At this time, I ask our Board of Trustees, does anyone have any questions in reference to the presentation? Seeing no questions, once again, thank you very much for your presentation. Have a great evening. At this time, I'd like to ask the Board of Trustees if anyone has any questions to our staff in regards to our delegation. Trustee Paula?
Thank you, and through the chair. My question would be, so Mr. Whelan, this is his second time that I've seen him come up and do the presentation. And I do understand the traumatic brain injuries because a family member has one. And I want to ask the board if they're willing to perhaps adventure into thinking that we can perhaps, remove rugby from a school or two to try and maybe go into something that isn't as dangerous.
Associate Director Amro?
Thank you. And through the chair, certainly we can review football teams and rugby teams. However, canceling programs such as football and rugby would have tremendous implications for that school and that school community, would require a tremendous amount of consultation. And it's not something that we're prepared to do as staff. Would we take direction in forms of a policy? Of course. But that would be something that the Board of Trustees would need to initiate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Associate Director Amro. Is that it, Trustee Polo? Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions? If you are online, I'm also logged into Zoom, so you can just message into the chat box if you do have a question. Seeing no questions, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'd be moving forward to our next item. Our next item this evening is D1, which is our regular reports. To start off with D1A, our Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association report. Trustee Luz Del Rosario.
We do not have a report tonight. I just want to remind everyone that there's a trustee seminar this weekend. So if you haven't signed up and you'd like to sign up, please let Michelle know. There's still opportunity to sign up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Luz Del Rosario. Next, we move on to item D1B, which is our good news items. Do we have any good news items this evening? Trustee Herman Valorio.
I'd like to report on one of the pre-Christmas activities or presentations for various schools happened for Christmas. And I'd like to mention one in particular. That's the celebration that was held at Iona Secondary School. They had a dance called the Snowflake Dance. This dance was for the PIP students, program for independent.
The chair, it's Planning for Independence. Students in the Planning for Independence program.
I dropped in and was very surprised to see that because I thought that it involved only the PIP students at Iona, whereas in fact, it involved PIP students along with support staff gathered at Iona, and they were from 6 high schools in Martins, Loyola, St. Marcellinus, Pocock, Joan of Arc, and of course Iona. There were approximately around 300 people in the gym. It was held in the Iona gym, and it was quite a sight to see because the whole thing was organized by the staff and students. Of course, the Z students were displaced. They couldn't hold their regular classes because the gym was being used. They ended up helping out, along with students from the leadership course, and included also students who were actors in a play that the Iona drama department had also presented the week before. The play was called Frozen, and the actors in full costumes were also in the gym, entertaining the VIP students as well as all of the other visitors. And the celebration included not only a dance, but they had crafts, music, because Frozen was a musical. And they also had some games, and everyone was having such a grand time. I was so inspired by the fact that VIP students were really entertained and they had a great time. So I hope that the whole thing was also organized with the help of outside organization called Jake's House. And the representative from Jake's House talked to me, and I said, well, I can talk to some of the families in Brampton, so because they could also do this in Brampton, as well as putting all the schools that had a PIP program. It was quite a change from all the concerts that I had to attend. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Trustee Herman Valoria. Do we have any other good news items this evening? Seeing none, thank you very much. Next, we move on to item, we have nothing for item F, which is our updates, for item E, which is our updates, information reports from committees for receipt. We next move on to item F1, which is our updates, information reports from administration for receipt. F1 is our vice principal leadership development. Superintendent Brunton.
Thank you, and good evening, and through the chair. The Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board is further committed to nurturing leaders who are visionary, innovative, student-focused, excellent role models, and collaborative in building Catholic communities within our schools. The board continues to promote, support, and recruit vice principal and principal candidates that will serve as future Catholic administrators. I refer trustees to page 24 of the report. There's going to be a few components that I'll be walking trustees through tonight with regards to qualifications required for any teacher candidates who wishes to pursue the position as a Catholic vice principal and principal in this board. Another component will be the process in which our board requires for potential candidates to be in a position of a pool of vice principals or principals, as well as the supports that we put into place for teachers who are going through the discernment process, as well as those who are newly appointed in the pool or newly appointed to a vice principal or principal position. We'll also be discussing what we put into place for any of the racialized being Black, non-Black, teacher candidates who also wish to pursue potential leadership in our board, and of course, understanding that that is also supported by the data in which we have representation in these roles in our schools. So I'd just like to start out on page 24, as trustees can see the complement of current principals and vice principals, both elementary and secondary in our board, whether it be in a school or a system level position. Following that, you'll see vice principal, principal qualification requirements. These requirements are required for all teachers in Ontario, again, and what are the requirements they need to pursue in order to enroll in the Principal Qualifications Part 1, PQP Part 1 program. Some of the requirements are being a member of the Ontario, in good standing with the Ontario College of Teachers and their teacher's certificate, an acceptable post-secondary degree. The candidate has to be qualified in one of three divisions. One must be the intermediate division as a teachable. 5 years experience at a minimum of classroom teaching experience, which means the candidate can take, if they have all the requirements, their PQP course part 1 after their 5th year of teaching. And they can require either 2 specialists being AQ courses, for example, special education specialists, religious specialists. It doesn't automatically mean it has to be those 2, but 2 specialists that have been qualified through the OCT and of course, Quaco. They can also have either 1 specialist and a half a master's degree, or a master's degree, or their equivalent of a doctorate, or at least 30 graduate post-secondary credits or the equivalent. So once the candidate has all of those requirements met, they can enroll in the PQP Part 1. Once they have completed PQP Part 1, they would have to complete PQP Part 2 to officially put their name forward for a position of a vice principal or principal. In order to enroll in PQP Part 2, of course, you have to have all the requirements met by PQP Part 1, as well as being a member with good standing with the OCT. Once that candidate attains PQP Part 1 and 2, and it's on their Ontario College of Teachers certificate, Dufferin Peel then purposely and intentionally recruits any candidates who wishes to pursue leadership. What we do at the beginning is we put out a call to all teacher candidates who may be in the discernment process, meaning they could be in the process of either taking the courses, or they could have completed the 2 courses and just need some information in terms of how to better prepare themselves with the skills and competencies of becoming a potential vice principal and principal. We have that meeting always in the fall, in the beginning of the school year, as the process runs throughout the year. When we meet with all the candidates, we would go over all of the qualifications required, specifically the qualifications required to be a potential vice principal in our board. And the qualifications, as you can see at the bottom of page 24, of course, the completion of Part 1 and 2 of their PQP as stated in their OCT certificate. They have to have completed the religious education, which is an AQ course for a vice principal, Part 1 and 2. The completion of a professional portfolio that demonstrates their leadership. This portfolio is ongoing during their discernment process and is always supported by their principal and family of schools or departmental superintendent. This portfolio is a reflection on the leadership competencies that they have demonstrated throughout their career as teaching. This portfolio is also supported by a mentor and also by their own school principal who would walk them through the portfolio. The portfolio is reflective of the Ontario Leadership Framework to give the teacher candidate a starting point as to where we are looking and what competencies and what area we're looking to the leadership framework, specifically to also the Catholic Leadership Framework. They also need 3 letters of references, one being their current immediate supervisor or principal, and 2 other references. They need a pastoral letter of reference from their current pastor of their home parish. And their portfolio, in which they put all of these items put together, they need to establish a meeting. The meeting will be between themselves, the principal, and their supervisory officer. The supervisory officer would then go over their portfolio and their experience in conversation with the candidate. They would look at the competencies and they would look at what initiatives and what involvement in terms of the candidate has been involved both on the instructional side and different committee work, both in and out of the school, and as well as conversations with the candidate's principal in terms of the leadership demonstrated at that school, and of course, looking at what experience that candidate brings. Once that candidate is successful, the superintendent of the candidate then evaluates their portfolio with their meeting. The portfolio then is evaluated and at an 80% must move on to the next phase of the process, which is a formal interview process with a panel of administrators and senior management team. If they are successful with the interview with the senior management team and they score in the interview a score of 80% or higher, that candidate then, once references have been checked and the references have also been referred to HR, the candidate then could potentially be placed in a vice principal's pool waiting to be placed, or they are placed right away if there is a need in a system immediately. Once the candidate is put through either a pool or is in a school, We feel it's extremely important in that the mentorship continues on through our Catholic mentoring leaders. And on page 25, once we have the candidates who are either in the pool or newly placed, we assign them all with mentors who are current principals or vice principals who have been in the role for some time, in which they can serve them as mentors. And the mentees can then learn from their mentors and attend sessions. These sessions are called the Catholic Leadership Seminar Series. These are 4 mandatory sessions that anybody who has been newly appointed as a vice principal or principal, either both internally or externally, must attend. These sessions are meant to be hands-on learning experience that are related to the job in which they have been appointed to or in a pool for. Some of the sessions which are coming up, which are our 4 mandatory sessions, which trustees can see on page 25, are Catholicity and religious education as pertaining to the role of a vice principal and principal, special education, equity and inclusivity, safe schools, human resources, and employee relations. These candidates, of course, are all coming from the fields of both secondary and elementary, and these 4 mandatory courses are programmed and scheduled by the senior admin team, along with anybody who is involved in any of those departments or expertise that some current principals might bring on for the presentation. As well as these sessions, the newly appointed mentees and mentors also attend a Catholic mentoring session. The Mentoring Catholic Leadership session is designed in collaboration with the current principals and vice principal associations, with some professional development opportunities each month for all those who have been newly appointed or are in their year 1 or 2 as a vice principal or principal. As trustees can see, going on to page 26, there are sessions each month for all of our newly appointed administrators. We open up these sessions also to any administrators who are willing to attend. A lot of the presentations are from our own internal staff and some external staff. And the presentations as well is mandatory for those who have just currently been appointed, and the topics that have been involved in the presentations have been surveyed with our current principals and vice principals on how best to support the newly appointed candidates and what are the areas of learning and the areas of support that any new vice principal or principal would benefit from with professional development. The board is also looking to attain and purposefully inspire and recruit candidates who come from a variety of racialized and equity-seeking backgrounds and differing abilities. In the beginning of the year, we also put out a call to any candidates, any teacher candidates who have identified themselves as a racialized future candidate. And we meet with these potential candidates and walk through the same process as we would in the beginning of the year, as we do for anybody who is wishing to aspire to be a vice principal in the board. On top of that, we have our current racialized administrators who are also participating to serve as mentors to anybody who wishes to have a racialized mentor who has gone through the process as well. We have regular meeting sessions in which we would walk them through the Catholic Leadership Seminar Series and of course the qualifications needed and appoint them with a mentor as required. On page 27, trustees can see the number of current racialized elementary vice principals and principals that we currently have in our schools, as well as our racialized secondary vice principals and principals that we currently have in our schools, and can compare it to the complement as listed on page 25. Mentoring for both the leaders of both the racialized mentoring and of course the mentors and mentees take place yearly. These are sessions that are always open, but we're always open to looking. And furthermore, look at our equity seeking groups currently that we do have, specifically one group that trustees might be aware of who organizes events in our school, such as the Black Expo, which is our Black Excellence Success Team, who also serves in a capacity of mentorship and leadership to any of those who wish to pursue as a current vice principal or potential principal as well. Mentorship continues throughout the year. As a board, we feel it's very important that the mentorship always continues, even through on a year 1 or year 2 principal or vice principals. We are always lifelong learners, and we are always looking to provide each of our candidates and each of our administrators with mentors and mentees throughout the process and throughout their career in Dufferin Peel. The sessions are always evolving and always changing depending on the needs of the system. There are a number of topics which trustees might notice that are not on this. However, each year we tend to switch up some of the topics that are going to be presented to our administrators based on the feedback we seek through them. As always, we are committed to providing all of our school leaders with the tools and skills to cope and the pace and the change and adapting to the ever-changing landscape and environment that we have in leadership, specifically in the role of a vice principal and principal. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Brenton, for that presentation. Do we have any questions? Trustee Daryl D'Souza, are there any other questions? If there's anyone online, feel free to just message into the chat box. Trustee Daryl D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, racialized administrators' numbers read as 28 and 13. Is it possible, or do you all have the numbers as to how many of them are principals in elementary and how many are vice principals, and what's the percentage of racialized principals and vice principals that we have both in elementary and secondary?
Chair, we can take that back and provide more detailed analysis in issues and events.
Do you have any numbers as of now? Or?
Through the chair, through our student census data, which was recently put in 2020, we did collate data based on two groups in particular, current vice principals and principals and members of the senior team. However, the responses that we received is 276. I can preliminarily say that out of the 276 respondents, the top three racialized groups were white, Black being second, and South Asian being third. In terms—
That's not my question.
Through the chair, we can take, we do have the data, however, it needs to be aggregated a little bit and analyzed because it is from census data whereby a couple of employee groups were grouped together to not be able to identify due to the small amount, for example, of the senior team, identify one individual. So we'll go back and manually look through our schools to see who the racialized administrators are through the leadership of Superintendent Brunton, and we'll provide that in issues and events. Perhaps not this week through the chair, but we will get to it.
Through the chair, specifically with a specific racialized group, we can get that data. However, preliminary, if trustees would like to know, we do have 11 racialized elementary vice principals. We have 17 racialized elementary principals. We have 10 racialized secondary vice principals. And we have 3 racialized secondary principals. In terms of the dynamics of those specific racialized groups, we can put that in issues and events as best as we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Trustee D'Souza. Any other questions? Trustee Herman Valori.
But I'd like to have an idea as to numbers who got involved in the LQ.
Through the chair, the CLQP.
Okay. How many started in September and how many finished at the end of the year?
Through the chair, are you looking for success rates in terms
Success
of
rates,
the
yes.
process? We can look at how to do that and provide that information in issues and events. We're going to have to be cautious of anonymity, though. We don't want to disclose anyone who might have been unsuccessful in that process. So we'll have to look at how we do that.
In general, I believe you had more than 100.
Oh, through the chair, that was just at the information meeting that came out in September. In order to go through the gates as identified in the report, there needs to be a formal meeting with the principal and the superintendent with respect to the portfolio. That was nowhere near 100 individuals. So at the information meeting where it was open to everyone to gather information, there were 100 people, but there was nowhere near 100 that went through the process.
So can you tell me, after they gone through the process, how many ended up as being legitimate candidates?
We can tell you how many went through the process in issues and events through the chair.
You don't have that now.
I don't believe so. I'd have to do some digging very quickly on my computer, and I don't want to provide inaccurate information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Mr.
Trustee
Chair.
Herman Valori. Do we have any other questions in regards to this presentation? Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for that presentation. Next, we move on to item F1, which is extended excursions. Superintendent Goss.
Good evening, and good evening to everyone through the chair. I refer the trustees to look on page 29 for the beginning of my presentation. So the purpose of this report is to provide a summary of the presentation made by schools to the Extended Excursion Committee on November 10th in 2023. There were no elementary schools that presented. There were several presentations from secondary panel and other program areas. The school principal and the excursion leader attended each of these presentations. The proposals that were submitted were complete with rationale of the excursion that was going to take place, the documentation, the itinerary, budget, and of course, the approved tour operator information. The Catholic faith is reflected in the itinerary that was proposed for the trip, including the expectations that all students and supervisors attend a Catholic Mass on the Sunday during the trip that they are proposing. A communication plan is in place for each of these different excursions for the supervisors, for the students, parents, and guardians throughout the trip. And the plan must, of course, be available to all parents. All participants purchased cancellation insurance, and all participants have mandatory medical coverage insurance for the appropriate excursion. The trip organizers and school principals must check with the Foreign Affairs Canada and the International Trade Canada to receive the latest reports outlined in the countries or areas of the countries that they are deemed safe in order for them to go to these various locations. You will find that there are two appendices, Appendix A and Appendix A1, that summarize the school's request for extended excursions as they were presented on November 10th of 2023. This evening, there was an update that was sent by Cindy Childs at 5:48, which is the TOPE note, and it shows that there was an update because there was a request put forward to explain the purpose of each of the trips that are going to the United States. And so I would refer you to those two appendices to see where all of these different excursions are going. I'm happy to take any questions from the trustees about any of the excursions.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Ross. I have trustee Luz Del Rosario, trustee Daryl D'Souza on the questions. Anyone else that has questions in regards to the presentation? And trustee Stefano Piscucci. Start off, trustee Luz Del Rosario. If you're online and would like to ask a question, feel free to message. Trustee Del Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the update that was given. So I was just looking at it. The A1 has the purpose of the trip, but the first portion did not say anything what the purpose of the trip is about. Are there any social justice, or is it a music competition? The one that's going overseas did not identify whether they are social justice competition, or music competition.
Thank you for your question. In terms of the overseas excursions, none of them are social justice. We have none going for that purpose. None of them are going for musical presentations or anything like that. All of them are going probably just to go on an overseas excursion to look at museums, and it's more of a historical and cultural experience for our students.
Okay. All right, so most of this, I would say, is just to give them the experience of
Yes.
being in another country.
Yes, that is
I'm looking
correct.
at Costa Rica for one thing.
Mhm.
I think in previous years, we had Costa Rica, and it was part of a social justice at one point. So I was just curious
Mhm.
if we're doing a Costa Rica social justice again. So this is just vacation technically,
Well,
but
I
they're
would-
missing schools?
Well, they're going to be going to visit museums and really kind of get a cultural experience of these different countries.
All right. So item number 5, DPCDSB going to New Zealand. There'll be 3 days, miss school. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, what does it involve?
Through the chair, I can start, and perhaps if there needs to be any more information. This is kind of an opportunity that's come about rather recently, and it's an exciting opportunity. If trustees would recall the NASA project, in which Dufferin Peel was involved with the math project with people all the way over in New Zealand, the Maori tribe. So this is an opportunity for some of our students to go to New Zealand and expand on that learning, and even develop some curriculum and materials there to bring back to Dufferin Peel. Hence the 3 days that are missed. It is far away. Our policy allows for there be approval of 5 days in special circumstances, but we're very, very, very excited about this opportunity and the learning that's going to come back to Dufferin Peel and the global nature of the learning that's going to happen. I don't know, Superintendent Vectorino, if I hit it on the head, but
continuing through the chair. Sorry, I'm just used to having this high up from before. There is also an opportunity for a deep cultural exchange with this trip that, as Associate Director Amaral has mentioned, has been in the planning for a number of years. So although not social justice in the sense that we typically conceive of the work, or the word, I'm sorry, the work in understanding more deeply other cultures who identify as Indigenous for members of our Indigenous community are key. So it's a combination of a cultural experience. There is very little that I would associate from the itinerary of the trip that would be classified as vacation. It is tours to language nests, like the language nest that we offer in Dufferin Peel, where Indigenous languages are learned, though obviously not the same language. An understanding of how the Maori live in the site in the state that we are visiting, and the life will be joint. So those attending the trip will be living in the way that the Maori live, which is very different from the way we live, definitely, but also from the way that some Indigenous peoples live in Canada. And the number of days, as mentioned, it is a long trip that require for us to have 6 days there. There's about 4 days worth of travel.
Just a follow-up, Mr. Chair. So this opportunity is not from one school only. So is this open to all of our secondary school and open to any students? Or do they have to be a member of the Indigenous?
I may have to defer to Superintendent Brunton for part of this. The opportunity is open to students from all schools. The reason that it isn't from one school is because our Indigenous student population is not large and is represented in a variety of schools. My understanding is that although open to all, only students who identify as Indigenous have chosen to participate.
Oh, so just to clarify, it's open to students who identify as Indigenous, not to all
My understanding
students.
is that it was open beyond that, but that only students who identify as Indigenous have chosen to participate, given, again, the distance and the fact that what's at the other end might not necessarily be what the broader public necessarily wishes to participate in, because there will be a lot of learning involved. As I said, learning language, learning how other people learn. It is a very working-based excursion for both students and staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Associate Director.
Thank you very much, Trustee Del Rosario. Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see that a lot of schools are getting back out there, which is fantastic. Actually, also surprised as well that the New Zealand trip is actually the cheapest out of all of them, which is interesting as well. But maybe that's something I should look at then, instead of going somewhere else. Can I just ask through you, Mr. Chairman, what is the percentage? I guess how many schools were successful in meeting the needs, like meeting the proposed trip requirements for history or business or whatever?
Through the chair, they were all successful. We did not turn anybody away.
That's good. Thank you. And when now for my next question, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you, under A1, they say history, theater, business studies, music, and so on and so forth. History in Chicago, what would that look like? Did they provide you with full itinerary?
Yes, again, through the chair. Certainly a full itinerary. It's looking at the history in the United States and more specifically in Chicago. So they will be going to museums and so on and historical sites.
Right. And final question, Mr. Chairman. Cost of the trip per student, that includes all admission fees and transportation. Well, transportation, obviously, hotel, food, like admission fees to everything. There's nothing else outside of pocket.
Again, through the chair, it would include everything. In most of these trips, what they have is they usually have one night or maybe two where the students would, want to go to a different restaurant that wasn't scheduled, just to give them a different experience, and parents would know about that. But otherwise, everything is covered. So that would be the transportation, hotel, and pretty well all meals.
Thank you. Is there anybody else, Mr. Chairman, after me? One last question, if you don't mind. Actually, Trustee Herman Valoria,
To the chair, I have a couple of questions. First one, all of these trips are not contingent on a minimum number of students who agree to take the trip. Otherwise, it gets canceled, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. And that's why we like to get this in front of the trustees about a year and a bit earlier, so those contingency plans can be put in place and students can start saving birthdays, Christmas, start some fundraising of their own, et cetera.
Okay. At this point, no deposits are collected.
Through the chair, the contract is such that students do not lose out on money should the trip get canceled.
My second question is continuing a trip to the United Kingdom. Is that a credit course being offered?
Through the chair, that's correct. That's the adult and continuing education course that's offered through adult and continuing education. Yes, it's the credit course.
And it's for what, the grade 12?
No, it is for the there's a grade 11 course and a grade 12 course.
No problem, Trustee Valoria. Trustee Stefano Pascucci.
Good, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All righty, do we have any other questions in regards to this item? Seeing no questions, thank you very much, Superintendent Goss, for that presentation. Next, we move on to our next item. We have nothing in item G, which is trustees, committees, administration reports requiring action. We have no additional business this evening. We move on to item I, which is questions asked by trustees. Do we have any questions this evening? On the list, I have Trustee Mario Pascucci, Trustee Stefano Pascucci, Trustee Paula DiMaggio. See, I tried. Any other trustees? Seeing none, Trustee Mario Pascucci.
Thank you. This may be more of a min and finance question, but David, or not David, sorry. It's regarding the house issue that we had at St. Martha and Mary School. We went to the city hall, et cetera, and had issues to deal with. Can you, David, could you mention to Matthew Thomas for tomorrow that I'll be talking to him regarding an appeal that's been launched by the individuals that own that piece of property. The reason I bring it up here, I'd like to recognize that the board supported the community by writing a letter showing the concerns, et cetera, that was written by Mr. Thomas, our SO, and it was well read and well delivered. Thank you very much for that. but it seems to be a continuous thing that we're looking forward here in terms of effect to our school population. So what I'm going to do is to mention to David, as I just said, I'll be speaking to Matthew Thomas, and we can elaborate at that point. David, is that okay with you? I just want to read this recorded as a question in minutes. Is that okay with you, David?
I believe through the chair that Director Mazzarato has commentary for you, Trustee.
Well,
Pastor.
excellent. Thank you. And by the way, I'm sorry I went off earlier. My battery died on my computer. I just got it up and running. Sorry, please. Yes, thank you, Superintendent. Sorry, Associate Superintendent, could you please, Director?
Through the chair, Trustee Pascucci, my office did receive notification of the appeal, and that has been passed on.
Oh, excellent.
Superintendent Matthew Thomas.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. I didn't know that because I know in the first run, apparently they did not send the initial documentation to the school. So that's why I want to make sure this is being recorded as, not recorded, but being recognized by our committee, by our board. Thank you, Madam Director. And as always, straight on top of it. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Mario. Trustee Stefano.
Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chairman, to staff. First of all, I've been going to a lot of school council meetings recently, just, as we're back now. A lot of people have been asking when the budget consultation is. I know this is a minute finance, but if you can get information out of the system regarding budget consultation, that date, because they're trying to figure out their next meeting.
Through the chair, ironically, we discussed that today at Executive Council, and Executive Superintendent Chirapaka will be communicating such in due time.
I promised that I would bring that up. So thank you very much.
Perfect timing, Trustee Pascucci.
Appreciate it. Now onto the faith and program side of the business. Through the Christmas season, I was attending a lot of as many schools as I could. Happy to see all the families out, kids out, and everything else. But out of all the schools that I represent, there was only 2, maybe 3 Christmas concerts. And a lot of parents, when I was doing the carousels walking around, were asking why there weren't any Christmas concerts anymore. Walking around the schools and seeing them, I can tell you that there was only one school I represent that actually had a priest come out and do a blessing. It wasn't so much Christmas, it was a lot more of playtime than it was of remembering what Christmas is. So is there a reason, obviously schools are able to do what they want in consultation with staff and principals, but is there any way that we can get back to the way it was before with Christmas concerts that is more centered on Catholic faith?
Through the chair, we can have conversations with reminding them to uplift the Catholic nature of any event that they're having in school. The events that happen at school, either during the day or after school, are highly reliant upon the professionalism and good nature of the teachers who put those together. And so we're very, very thankful for our teachers who put their names forward to support those endeavors in schools and school communities and the excellent hard work that they do in order to prepare. But in terms of the point of uplifting, the Catholic faith, we can certainly take that back.
I appreciate it. And I also think that, as many teachers that I saw that gave up their time, and the principals and secretaries and everybody else at the school that were there. And I appreciate all the time that they give, because a lot of it's free time to them. It's volunteer. But I am saying that a lot of parents were asking, where are the Christmas concerts? And it's something that maybe that one thing for staff to want to do it, maybe have Christmas, maybe have parents involved in that decision as well. That's possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Stefano. Trustee Paula.
Thank you. And through the chair, my one question was very similar to Trustee Stefano Pascucci's. So I attended a few Christmas concerts. Happy to attend them. They were very fun. I do want to comment that some of the Christmas concert had 50% Christianity. Some of them had 90% and higher of Christianity involvement. So I wanted to ask, as far as the Christmas concerts, can we direct them more towards Christ? There's a lot of beautiful songs and things that we can celebrate. Also, a nativity scene would be nice to see in the schools as well. And I wanted to know if we can have standardization as far as the output of the Christmas concerts. Can they be 90% and higher of Christianity, please?
The chair, thank you for the question.
Sorry,
Again.
just to cut you off one second.
Yeah.
One of the concerts that I attended, the first song was Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And so I
Mhm.
was like, am I in the wrong school? So
So through the chair, these are also exciting events for children at a most magical time of the year. So although we would want to uplift the Catholic nature of our schools and our system, we would also want the opportunity for our little ones to have some fun.
I understand that, but we're to disciple and teach them well. And that's the prime time to do
And
it.
through the chair, arguably, we can do that through other hymns as well and songs. So we can take that back and uplift that.
Yeah, if we could just have standardization, just because some I felt were more Christian than others. And my second question would be, um, would we consider awards for Catholic Student of the Year or Catholic Teacher of the Year, where they are leading children closer to God, actively promoting the faith, perhaps win prizes?
So through the chair at graduations, we do have the Catholic Leadership Award for both elementary and secondary, where that's contemplated and considered.
Is there anything the board would be willing to participate in as far as that?
Through the chair, that is sponsored by the board, that award. Traditionally, it was sponsored by the Ontario Catholic School Trustees Association, but it's switched now to the board. So it is the board sponsoring that leadership. But we can also look at ways of celebrating and honoring Catholic leadership in schools.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee Paula. Do we have any other questions? Seeing no questions, next item, we have no declared interest items this evening. We'll be moving into our in-camera session. We'll be going directly into the in-camera session as the doors close. To those joining us online, at this time, we'll be going into a closed session with the trustees and then coming back online, and you'll be put into a break room. So could I get a mover for to move into in-camera? Moved by Trustee Stefano Piscucci. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. And we're back from our in-camera. And we're back from our in-camera session to report our item L. We had passed the approval of the minutes from the in-camera session of the Faith and Program Committee meeting of October 10th, 2023. Our next meeting is on March 5th, 2024. Could I get a mover for adjournment? Moved by trustee Luz Del Rosario. All in favor? Perfect. Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Thank you very much and hope everyone has a great evening.